That's my life.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Behind the Tech with Kevin Scott. You can find links on all major podcast platforms, and we'll have a little bit more on that here in a second. How's it going over there, Weddy?
I don't know.
If you were an older woman and you started a movie, your name could be Weddy White.
See, I would have said that as Weddy Whites a lot. But yes.
Paul, can you tell the studio audience what you learned?
Well, we walked the dog today, and as we do. Mm-hmm. Wasn't supposed to rain. Supposed to rain. Mm-hmm. Guess what it did? Can you guess? It's going to be on Unsolved Mysteries next week.
Do you know this person?
It didn't just rain. It rained, like tropical rainstorm rain. It's also approximately 25 degrees cooler today than it was yesterday, which is a little weird.
Oh, yeah. It is cooler. I wouldn't say it's cold by any means, but.
I mean, honestly, it's nice out in a way.
No.
I mean, it's just.
Minus the rain.
Yeah. I mean, I like the rain. I like to know it's coming. I like to be prepared for it.
Question: does your many smartphones have a radar on it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not dark sky, because that's going away if it's on an Android.
Right. But, I see. Did you? Okay. Yes. Is that why you ask?
Mm-hmm. I was just.
Yeah.
Well, you can look at it.
I don't know where the extent of this rain is. Are you experiencing rain where you are?
I don't know. I'm in a basement, Paul. Doing a podcast.
That's why we work with computers, so we don't have to deal with this stuff.
Anyways, it's Friday.
Yeah. I'm just going to bring this up briefly because it could impact people. For 10 days now, we have been getting spam attacked. And in the 2 minutes it's taken us to record this podcast, somebody has already created a new account and has already started posting spam. And man, and we had a more, this is stuff that doesn't really, not that people would ever know about this stuff, but I mean, as part of my daily ritual, I get up and I look at the comments and whatever, and I look at the forums
but not weather radars.
Now the weather, there was no rain in the forecast. Yeah, but starting sometime last week, there's been multiple instances of spam comments and forum posts. And then over the weekend, it got really bad, like where it was blocks happening at different times during the day. So I was kind of sitting on it watching, And then maybe you remember better than I do, but someday this week, some attack was launched. And it was like a bunch of accounts had been created in the past, and they used them all at once. And it was like pages and pages of spam posts. So Nick had to get involved in. And it kind of, calmed down for a day. And then we're kind of back to where we were last weekend, where, although this time it is, and again, I don't think anybody cares, but I mean, how it happens. But this is unique because people are literally creating these accounts in real time and then just posting spam. And I delete it all, and they keep making accounts, and I don't know. So anyway, at some point, I hope we'll get on top of this. But this has been my week, dealing with this kind of stuff.
Good old bots, and if before anybody mentions CAPTCHA, it doesn't stop them. So
no, CAPTCHA. Jeez, I wish.
Yeah,
I wish.
So we've got that going on. We've got E3 on Sunday. E3 is always at a terrible time on the Sunday. It's like 1 o'clock or something like that, or in the afternoon. I can't remember.
ET, it is 1 o'clock. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Microsoft live stream or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. So I put something up about that this morning between spam. And I have to say, I mean, obviously E3 is virtual this year, and I'm sure each of the companies will do whatever they do. I don't know if Sony might not participate, right? Like last year.
Yeah, I don't think they are.
And they do their own thing. That's cool. But I think, now that Microsoft has, I think, more gaming studios than any company on earth, if I'm not mistaken, or they've got to be certainly among the console makers. This could be interesting for people who care about video games. I personally, I love video games. I mean, obviously, and I know we can joke about it. I play the same game over and over again, but I pay attention to the industry for sure, and I'm interested in it. I do find you know, game demo, game demo, game
Mm-hmm.
demo, game demo to be a little tedious,
Yep.
personally. And by the way, speaking of the one game I do play, Call of Duty is going to find itself in an interesting and weird place this year because they're apparently going back to World War II again, which,
Oh,
I'm
good.
okay with.
We haven't done it in a while.
But that's not the direction I think most people want this thing to go. I think
Right.
the Modern Warfare stuff is probably the more popular. Black Ops falls into the same category. And I don't know if you heard this, Brad, but apparently they're going to change Warzone to a World War II thing this fall.
I was just wondering that. Are we going to get like 1940s Italy? Like, is that what we're going to be?
I don't know what it's going to be exactly. Yeah, they should just make it Sicily.
Yeah.
It's an island. It's perfect.
Well, we're going to want Sicily, but we're going to get like North Africa, and we're all going to be like, what?
Yeah, exactly. Right, Samoa or something. I like that. I don't play Warzone, but I had heard, and you probably know more about this than I do, that they incorporated some classic Call of Duty maps into areas of the Warzone map, which I think is awesome. And if they do this World War II thing correctly, it doesn't matter. It's still going to make a lot of people upset, but it would be really neat if they did the same thing, but with the World War II maps from all the different, Call of Duty
I'm
1
sure
through
they
3
will.
plus World at War and whatever, Call of Duty World at War, whatever those things were called. There are some absolutely classic maps, and I mean dating back to, well, at least to version 2. I don't know if did 1 have multiplayer?
I can't even remember. I remember 2 though.
But two did.
Yep.
And there are some classic maps from that, and this is, I can't believe this is 15 years ago.
Whoa.
Call of Duty 2. Yeah, debuted 15 years ago. Crazy. No, 16 years, right? 2005. Wasn't that?
Yeah.
Whatever year the Xbox 360 came out. 2005, 16 years ago. Yep, nuts.
Yeah. I'd say it's worked out well for them.
They made a bit of bucks. They're doing okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's like running a movie. It's like video game equivalent of Star Wars or the Marvel universe or something. It just keeps cranking out new stuff. I don't know, but
Listeners of First Ring Daily have likely heard the name Kevin Scott, but if you haven't, and that's okay, he is the Chief Technology Officer over at Microsoft, and he has a pretty cool podcast. And this week, we are highlighting the episode with Dr. David Baker, the Director of Institute for Protein Design at the University of Washington. You can listen to Kevin and Dr. Baker talk about just designing proteins, and it is a really complex and really cool topic. You can find links in the description below or on all major podcast networks. He also has a really impressive back catalog where he talks to people like Sam Altman, Mae Jemison, and a whole bunch of others, and you can just kind of peruse through it at your own, but make sure to add Behind the Tech to your podcast feed, as it is an impressive podcast and something that Paul and I have both been listening to frequently. So I made a mistake, Paul, and it's annoying.
a mistake?
No. So I'm making the assumption that whatever happens on June 24th with the Windows stuff is that it's going to come to the Insider program first. I think that's kind of, I think that's whatever. So I don't have any hardware running. Well, I didn't have any hardware running the Insider program.
The dev channel, especially.
Yeah, I did it in a VM, and I'm like, if they're going to do this, like I want. So I put this laptop, this one right here, this Surface Book 3 on it.
Yeah, that's probably the right one to do.
Except that every day during this podcast so far, it's just going.
Because it's like the power management doesn't work anymore.
I don't know if it's the power management that doesn't work. It's probably trying to install like 7 updates.
Oh, okay, that's good. That's okay. Like that.
Yeah,
will
I mean it's fine, but
out. Yeah,
I should have done one that I could just put in a closet and not
We should talk about that. I've gotten a couple of emails from people that I think are onto something. I got it now. Of course, I've archived them, so it's gonna be a little hard to find. Bart Williman, for example, he's a reader. Yeah, you probably have seen him on the site. He kind of brings together some things. We sort of talked about it on Windows Weekly, and maybe you and I have kind of talked about this notion that 21H1 was delivered in a way that was not the same as the past 2 supposed feature updates, right? Like those 2, the previous 2 were what I'll call traditional cumulative updates. Obviously, they didn't really change that much. And Microsoft, but 21H1 is different. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It happens in 3 minutes. It's the quickest install of all time. It still has the same, no impact, but it's interesting how fast it happens. And what he's saying is that in the dev channel, which is the thing you just installed, and I also have it on one computer. I got to figure out which computer that is. they recently received 2 cumulative updates, 21H2 and something else. And he says when 21H2 is delivered, it will come with a new Windows feature experience pack that cannot be blocked by IT admins. Um, and he says, given this, it's reasonable to assume that the second cumulative update will be the enablement package that activates Sun Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, and he thinks, and I do too, that IT admins will be able to block this enablement package indefinitely. And this aligns with what Mary Jo has been kind of saying, that, you know, there's going to be like a fork of sorts,
Yep.
right? Now, we've been thinking of it as Windows 10 and Windows 11. It might be Windows 10 and Windows Sun Valley. I don't like the idea of there being two Windows floating out in the world. It's kind of like the late 1990s all over again, even though it's the same technology. But this is a way to do what I think a lot of people have been talking about for a long time, which is, you know, kind of have a version of Windows that's for consumers that people can get excited about, and then a version for Windows where it moves a little more slowly and isn't necessarily as out there from a UI perspective, doesn't require extra training and all the costs associated with that. And of course, it's the same operating system. So the driver model, the app model, all that stuff is all the same. So everything works on both sides, of course. And I think this might be you know, I think we're landing where this thing is going to be. I think whether every detail what he just, you know, he said and I said through him, or he said through me, is correct or not, it kind of doesn't matter. I think that is how this kind of goes down, you know, because this is the thing we're all kind of obsessing over these days, right? And I think that's all that testing of Windows feature experience packs and these other ways of delivering updates that have happened in the inside a program with no net effect to the UI or to the experience has been confusing. But clearly, they're trying to make sure that this thing is reliable.
Yep.
And a lot of people are saying, well, how can they do, you know, it's June, this thing's going to come out in October, which means it's going to be finalized in August. They haven't tested it at all. How could they possibly do this? And the truth is they have tested it, because the important part of the testing isn't the look of the thing, although there'll be feedback, of course, and I'm sure some of it will be negative. It's how you deliver this thing. It's super important that they get this right. And you got to remember, this is a company that for the past almost 6 years now, almost exactly 6 years now, has completely screwed up how you deliver updates in Windows 10. So this is actually kind of a big deal. And it's funny because if this thing lands and it's just UI, which, by the way, I think there's a 80% possibility that's basically all this is. And I know some people disagree with that. It's fine. This is still a major update because they have figured something out, right? It's still a big deal. You know, 6 years ago when Terry Myerson promised that Windows would always be up to date. We'd all be on the same version. Like, the point of that was to keep the entire community of users, you know, now 1.3 billion people, secure, because the threats are only escalating. You know, you want to be on the same code base. Have they had problems making that work, you know? And I feel like in recent years, they've kind of stumbled into maybe a way to make it work. And I think that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah, I think you're spot on for everything that I've heard, that it's just an experience pack, but it makes so much more sense to like parse it down to a single sentence. Enterprise wants to move very slow. Consumers want to move very fast. They're polarizing techniques to how do you update an OS that you're trying to appease the consumers to keep positive thoughts about your OS, but your cash flow doesn't want you to do anything. And so that's the, you know, they looked at a whiteboard and said, how do we solve this? And the answer appears to be experience packs. The question will be, how far can they take an experience pack without having to touch anything else? Because
no, you're right. I'll say, you know, people who aren't developers maybe have this has kind of glossed over them a little bit, meaning everybody, I guess. But I mean, you know, Windows enthusiasts, even if they aren't developers, will probably have been paying attention to this Project Reunion stuff, right? Just to kind of recap, the point of Project Reunion was that starting actually with Windows 8, but we'll call it with Windows 10, Microsoft created this new app model. It's really a mobile app model. And it's, you know, it's the store is part of it. That's how you deliver the apps that you create for this model. The problems with this platform, UWP, are many, but some of the basic problems that they're trying to fix with with Project Reunion include that these features that go into UWP apps are specific to specific Windows 10 versions.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have Windows 10 1809 and there's a feature that arrived in 1903 and you make a UWP app that runs and requires that feature, people on older versions can't access it, right? So it creates this fragmentation problem. And it's weird because Windows 10 is a single version of Windows. There were probably, I don't know off the top of my head, but like 6 or more versions of Windows 10 that are supported today, or whatever the number is, but there's some number. And so they're trying to separate features from individual Windows 10 versions. Does that sound familiar? Mm-hmm. We're talking about feature experience packs. They do exactly the same thing. You can have 3 different versions of Windows 10 out in the field, and each of them can be on the same Windows feature experience pack, right?
Yep.
It's exactly the same thing. They're just applying it to features, to end user features, right? Smart. This is actually really smart.
Yeah.
And I don't mean it's smart like, oh, they should have known this in the beginning. Like when Windows 10 was so new and they were really, honestly, especially in the beginning, they were really unclear on how this was going to work. And I don't think it was just a communication issue. I think they really weren't really sure. They had to adjust the schedule. I mean, businesses have gotten at least 2 or 3 major changes to the life cycle support, the support life cycle. They've been, kind of adapting. But the thing you said is exactly right. You've got 2 different groups of people that have completely different needs being served by the same product. How do you handle that?
Yep. And
this is where we land. It's not something. 6 years ago, if we had this little debate, neither one of us would have said we got to have Windows feature experience packs. We never would have landed there. But you have to have made all the mistakes and the ups and downs to kind of arrive at this. And I think that's what we're seeing. I think that's why this. Honestly, I think that's why this is a big deal. For people, they're going to look at it and say it's beautiful or it's not beautiful, and that will be why it's a big deal to them. But honestly, from an architectural standpoint, I feel like this is the big deal, you know?
Because the question becomes how much can you cram into an experience pack without messing up with the underlying infrastructure? Yeah. Because if they can really just make this a top dressing layer, it's going to have a big win for them to be able to ship things potentially even faster.
Oh yeah, for sure. At the speed at which you deliver app updates. I mean, this is what Google did with Android. Google ran into a problem with wireless carriers where they would put features into the operating system, but they weren't ever mobile carriers too as well. They weren't mobile carriers and hardware makers weren't delivering the updates, and they said, "Well, screw this. We'll bypass them." And the way they did it was they made key system components available through the Play Store, not as apps exactly, but that's what we think of as there being apps in the store. This is and Microsoft has done a little bit of that kind of work as well, but they're doing it from outside the store ecosystem apparently. But it's the same problem, not caused by the same reasons, but you've got the enterprise customers that don't want to upgrade. You've got consumers that don't care, and then you have enthusiasts who really do care. And it's like, well, how do we get this stuff into the platform without requiring people to go through a major feature update?
Yep. Because
feature updates are version upgrades. They can be horrible and they take a long time, So anyway, I'm babbling a little bit, but I mean, I feel like there's a lot going on here, even if to typical users, all we get is a new UI. Because people are going to be, all they did was put lipstick on a pig. And it's like, guys, hold on a second.
They just changed the model.
There's a lot more going on.
Yeah. It's a big, does this work? And if it does, then maybe that's the next generation part that they keep talking about. Like, this is how we're going to go forward updating the OS. Exactly right.
It is in fact, if they're, you can imagine the marketing speak that will come out of their mouths. It's like, people are all concerned about whether, this is the last version or there's a different version, and they're going to say there are no versions. That's the point. There's going to be like an OS core or whatever they're going to call that now, that, of course there's a version to it. But the truth is, as long as it's supported, we have all these different avenues for updating the operating system at a deep level, updating apps that come with the operating system and services, making changes, adding features. And it doesn't have to be this giant monolithic thing that all gets updated at one time. And that is that's a new Windows, even though it's been happening under our noses for the past at least 2 or 3 years,
I wonder. So they started doing this, was it last year, where the updates for it, and they just did it. That's why this last one installed, where it doesn't do the whole OOBE experience. Like, it just sort of, it's an OS update, but it just happens in 3 minutes or whatever. I wonder if that's just how it is going forward. That's it.
Right.
It's just
right.
that, and then every once a year we get a new experience pack, and that's it.
That's great. I mean, and that again, you could go back 6 years, and they're like, we're going to release 2 major versions of the operating system every year, and you're like, what? What are you talking about? This is a process that's always been terrible. Mobile operating systems, which people are way more engaged with, are only updated like that once a year. But Google, well, Apple especially, this as an iPhone user, how many iOS updates do you install in a year, really? I mean,
yeah, it's not too many.
But they have started spreading it out. It used to be one,
Yeah.
and obviously security updates, whatever. But I'm talking like Apple adds features, I would say 3 to 6 times a year, maybe. You'll get a version 14.5.7, whatever it is. And it's like this
stuff.
one adds,
Yep.
Whatever. And the problem with Apple's platforms is that they still are monolithic. The next version of Mac OS has a feature where you can blow away a user and all their data without killing the operating system, which is smart. They're finally getting a little more sophisticated with this. Microsoft, Apple, Google, whoever makes platforms like this, they all face the same exact problems, and they're all right now trying to solve them in I would say similar ways. Of course, whatever. I care mostly about the Windows stuff, but Windows as a service. There were maybe 5 or 6 things about Windows 10 that are pretty terrible. That one, to me, is probably the worst. And if we're right here, we're speculating, of course. But if Windows feature experience packs twice a year is what we get, even if it's 6 times a year, who cares? If that's what fixes it, fantastic. Fantastic.
Well, we've only got to wait
2 weeks, right? Less than 2 weeks.
2 weeks from yesterday to find out. Today's podcast is brought to you by Behind the Tech with Kevin Scott. You can find links on all major podcast platforms.
Exciting.
I wonder if it'll rain.